All right, Tulsi Kratz, Bernie Kratz, free radicals. Are we at the end? Are we nearing the end before it begins, really? Before enough people can see Tulsi Gabbard, before even the summer is done? Remember what I said about Labor Day? Typically after Labor Day, that's when people start paying attention to things. But the Democrats are trying to make it so a lot of people don't get to see who Tulsi Gabbard is. Unfortunately, this video aired. I missed this one a couple days ago. 3 days ago. Tucker Carlson talking about the third Democratic debate. The headline is "Not Likely to Make Third Democratic Debate." The guest on this segment is the brilliant Michael Tracy. Give Tucker Carlson credit. He does, even though ideologically speaking he does not align with Tulsi Gabbard, he understands that Tulsi Gabbard is a candidate whose voice deserves to be heard. Let's play some of this, and then I'm going to make some commentary.
2016 Democratic primary was rigged against Bernie Sanders in favor of Hillary Clinton. Now it's looking like the 2020 race may have similar problems. Tulsi Gabbard has logged at least 2% in several dozen polls. But the DNC does not want her on the debate stage, and they're claiming now that those polls aren't certified polls. So Gabbard likely won't make the next round of primary debates. Michael Tracy has been following this from the very beginning. He's an independent journalist, and he joins us tonight. So I don't know exactly how many of our viewers are going to vote for Tulsi Gabbard, probably none. But I think we can all agree that Tulsi Gabbard is a valuable voice. We should hear from Tulsi Gabbard.
Probably none of the Fox News voters are going to vote for Tulsi Gabbard. Really? Really, Tucker? See, this is where both the left and the right have this blind spot when it comes to understanding what people want. People are not afraid of Tulsi Gabbard. She's not a lunatic. She's sincere. She speaks honest to goodness, truth to power type issues. There's crossover appeal for libertarians and conservatives. And I think that statement by Tucker Carlson was, I guess, a self-defeating prophecy of some degree, but certainly not warranted at this stage of the game. And I'd like to think that we're just in the beginning. That's why I say, is it over before it begins? I mean, if she doesn't get to the third debate, this is going to be a tough go. But I think it's almost like weaning yourself off of, narcotics or whatever it is that you're addicted to. Right now, everybody's addicted to media. Oh, she needs to be on the debate stage. This is going to give alternative media an opportunity to hopefully shine and hopefully outshine news channels like Fox News and MSNBC and the Hillary Clinton News Network.
And it seems to me, I don't want to be paranoid, but it sounds like the Democratic Party, they don't want her voice included. Am I being a conspiracy person by wondering that?
Well, you might be surprised, Tucker. She does tend to generate actually somewhat significant support among even conservatives and libertarians, notwithstanding the fact that she has a fairly straightforward left-wing policy agenda, but she has something about her, ambience that draws a sort of idiosyncratic range of support from across the spectrum, and I think that has rubbed certain people the wrong way. I'm not going to allege a conspiracy as to why she is likely going to be excluded from the next debate, but I am going to allege...
Okay, so we know Tulsi Gabbard is not a Russian hoaxer. We know she's for free speech, right? So that's rubbed people the wrong way. And the ambiance thing that Michael Tracy alluded to, my analysis of that, and he's kind of onto it. He's smarter than I am, so I would trust his analysis over mine. I would say there's a genuineness to Tulsi Gabbard. There's a sincerity that people see. When they look at Elizabeth Warren, they're not going to see it. Okay, they're not going to see it. Kamala Harris, not the warm and fuzzies. And I'm not talking about the fact that say Tulsi Gabbard is warm and cuddly and soft and fuzzy. No, she's stern and a little rough around the edges when she needs to be. But you could tell her argumentative side comes from wanting to be heard and wanting to represent the people. And you can feel that. It's not a gimmick. It's not poll tested or focus tested. And that is why Tulsi Gabbard has this ambiance or crossover appeal that Michael Tracy alludes to.
That the criteria the DNC is using to determine who is included and who is excluded is laughably arbitrary. As I mentioned in an article that I wrote this week in Real Clear Politics, Gabbard has gotten over the required polling threshold in 2 separate polls in 2 separate early primary states. The Boston Globe is the newspaper with the widest circulation in New Hampshire, and the Post and Courier is the newspaper with the widest circulation in South Carolina. Gabbard has gotten placed at 2% or more in polls published by those 2 newspapers, but the DNC, in its bizarre, mysterious, infinite wisdom, has decreed, again, arbitrarily, that those polls are not approved, or they're not, they don't satisfy some weird criteria that nobody can quite ascertain. So while I'm not going to allege an overt conspiracy, although it's true that everybody from Donna Brazile to Elizabeth Warren alleged that the previous primary cycle was, quote, rigged, but you'd be forgiven for having that impression given how obscure and sort of inscrutable the criteria that the DNC is using this time around are. I'm not saying that Tulsi should necessarily have special privileges or that the rules weren't laid out months ago, which they were, but the rules don't seem to hold up to any kind of logical scrutiny.
Right.
That's the problem.
And we know for a fact they despise her because she's challenged their neoconservative assumptions about foreign policy. And
all right, so you get the end there where Tucker is talking about the neoconservatives, or neoliberals in this case. And this is the hard battle, folks. This is a huge faction within both parties, both political parties. I may disagree on some of this hardcore progressive stuff that comes my way, or I may really just totally dislike and want to throw up every time someone brings in identity politics, because that's typically how I react. I go, we've got all these issues and you're bringing up this. I mean, skin color, remember we were supposed to just kind of ignore skin color. Now all we talk about is skin color, and what it's doing is it's dragging people down. It's making people feel bad that they can't do anything because it's intrinsic to who someone is. So you're thinking to yourself, what can I do to make up for this? And there's not much you can do. But there's plenty that you can do when it comes to actual policies that will help the American people and move us forward. But not only is the DNC in danger of splitting as a party, because they're really close, this progressive wing of the party, whether you like it or not, and I tend to like it because it's rebellious and it's anti-establishment. And there are a number of things when it comes to corruption, breaking up of the banks. There are universal principles that people, when they hear them spoken out loud coherently, and it's not drowned out by words like socialism or democratic socialism, when they hear the policies articulated, they tend to think, okay, that's great. And a terrific example would be Bernie Sanders at the Fox Town Hall. I mean, people were gravitating toward that message. People understood it. Bernie was coherent. He wasn't acting like the angry guy on the front lawn. He did some very wise sort of A-B comparisons and doing some contrasting and so forth to get people to think what they actually need and want. What are my economic interests? Tulsi Gabbard not being in this debate is almost like, I don't know, it's some sort of weird blacklisting. And keep in mind, I would do it this way if I were the Democratic Party. I would have maybe one or two very early primaries. Very early primaries. And then see how the candidates do in the actual primaries. That means people went in and they cast a vote for the candidate, and you can see how they finished. Now, if there are a bunch of candidates that finish below 2%, then the DNC will no longer have them in any future debates. That's why if you had a couple of really early primary states, you could, weed out some of these lower tier candidates. Now, it's already starting to happen. That congressman, I think it was Moulton, I think he dropped out from Massachusetts. And so the field is getting smaller and smaller. Tulsi Gabbard, among all of these candidates that are remaining, she's actually got some pretty good numbers, considering all the candidates who remain, all of the big name people that came in early, guys like Cory Booker and Beto O'Rourke. Tulsi Gabbard is right there. So to pull the plug on her at this stage, at least when it comes to the national debate scene, is much like theft. It's much like saying, we've decided or decreed, like Michael Tracy says here, we've decreed that these are the candidates we want. We don't believe Tulsi Gabbard represents mainstream Democratic politics. And they could easily do the same thing to Bernie Sanders if it were not for the fact that he is polling well. And in some states, I think he's winning. I think he's running away with some states, and nobody's going to talk about it. And Joe Biden is starting to fade. So as Biden fades because he's having cognitive issues, and those issues are going to get worse. They're not going to get any better. Who's there to pick up the support? Well, Elizabeth Warren. And some progressives, they've fallen for Elizabeth Warren. But keep in mind, Warren is your worst opportunity to beat Donald Trump. She's the worst. The best two are Bernie and Tulsi. And I think Tulsi's at the top. I think if you put Tulsi in a head-to-head matchup with Donald Trump, she's got a shot at carrying 40-plus states and winning in the biggest electoral landslide since, Ronald Reagan in 1984. So let's continue to talk about independent media and push that idea out. I'm going to talk about it in every video. We cannot go down without a fight. We cannot just be complacent and say, okay, let's just take the bleep sandwich that the Democratic Party is going to give us again. And it could still be Biden, people. It could still be Biden. People are running around, and their argument is he's not Trump, and people like him, and people are nostalgic for Barack Obama. Now, I will say this. Elizabeth Warren is not going to do well in the African-American community. Same with Mayor Pete. He's not polling too well with black folks, all right? And that matters within a Democratic primary. It matters a lot. And I think Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders and obviously Joe Biden because of his connection with Barack Obama, those are your, I think, top candidates, maybe Cory Booker or Kamala Harris, but I don't see either one of those two now making any kind of a significant run. I think at this point you're down to 3 people, but you could have 4 if Tulsi were able to climb over some of those candidates who are starting to fade. And I think she has the capability of doing that. But according to this, and this is now a meme, because unfortunately Fox News and Tucker Carlson here decided to do a video called Tulsi Gabbard not likely to make third Democratic debate. That's just devastating to just see that as a video. And I know some of the people over at the Huffington Post and at TYT, even though they hate Tucker Carlson, and they probably don't really like Michael Tracy much either, they're probably loving the fact that this video is out there and it's got 173,000 views in 2 days. All I can say is I'm going to keep fighting and telling people not to give up, and also to start looking at pushing independent media outlets to start to cover Tulsi Gabbard town hall, Tulsi Gabbard debate, whatever it is, if she's not on that stage, there needs to be an alternative for folks that want to hear about real issues rather than gotcha questions and tribalism and identity politics. We have to do better as a country. And by the way, we have to bring in more voters. We've got to bring in all these disaffected Republicans, these independents, these people, this guy Joe Walsh, he's not the guitarist, he's the former congressman and talk show host. He's now challenging Trump in the primary. A weakened Donald Trump will be easier to beat, but we need the right candidate to do it. And it's not Elizabeth Warren, people. It's Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and that's kind of it, unless you're looking for a third party, and we know how difficult that's going to be. So we need to stay the course, and also we need to encourage our fellow citizens to get involved and to start talking to their friends and neighbors about this stuff, because nothing's going to change at all if we don't actually get serious about this problem. And the problem is both political parties are incredibly corrupt and just make backroom deals and anoint candidates rather than nominate candidates. All right, I am done. I will be back soon. Thanks for subscribing and watching. Don't forget me on Patreon and also via PayPal. I will put my PayPal address in there if you'd like to donate to the channel. Like a one-time donation, that would be very much appreciated. Talk to you all soon.